Donald Trump and his entourage are so self-contradictory, conflicted, and detached from reality that it is difficult to anticipate what they will actually attempt and how much they will be able to carry their intentions through. We know their intentions include eliminating all barriers to their power, scapegoating of stigmatized groups, redistribution of wealth and income upward, and a war on the world to impose U.S. domination and environmental destruction. Their efforts to realize these objectives will result in enormous misery and destruction. Those efforts are also likely to result in a substantial pushback that could either overcome the MAGA project or simply fade away in the face of repression and despair. This commentary looks at the unknowns of the Trumpian future. The next commentary will consider what we can reasonably expect. Future commentaries will look at what is to be done. It is impossible to know whether the Trump regime will rapidly self-destruct, successfully impose a reign of terror that dominates the U.S. for years or decades to come, or deadlock indefinitely with anti-MAGA forces. In the best case, we will face an exaggerated version of the first Trump administration, combined with the broad right-wing program represented by Project 2025. In the worst case, we will face a violent, full-scale fascist assault on every aspect of American life. We need to be prepared for either, or for something in between, and for how to survive and overcome them. Trump has been inaugurated into a world order in polycrisis. Unipolar U.S. hegemony has been replaced by multiplying wars, the rise of great power conflict, and the decline of international cooperation inside and outside the UN. The polycrisis has also been marked by fragmentation of the global economy and great power struggle to dominate global economic networks. International climate protection has become a transparent sham, and major political forces, notably Trump himself, deny the reality of climate change. The remaining institutions of democratic rule have been shredded by a transition to transparent plutocracy on the one hand, and the rise of movements, parties, and national leaders who resemble the classic fascists of a century ago, similarly the product of burgeoning global disorder. The probable course and effects of Trump and of MAGA must be considered in the light of the polycrisis. The past dozen years have witnessed the rise of movements in many countries that resemble the fascism of 1920 to 1945. They manifest smashing of democratic institutions, contempt for constitutions and laws, utilization of violence for political purposes, scapegoating of racial, ethnic, gender, political, and other denigrated groups, hostility to transnational cooperation, authoritarian dictatorship, and a variety of related characteristics. To include the many manifestations of this phenomenon, rather than exclusively those who proclaim themselves fascists, they may well be characterized as the new para-fascists. Donald Trump is a paragon of this new para-fascism. His rise to power has coincided with that of para-fascists around the world. He admires and imitates them, and his behavior in office may in many ways resemble theirs. Notwithstanding his claims to fix the problems people are facing, Trump in power will only aggravate them. The rubbishing of safeguards provided by democratic governance will amplify irrational policymaking and exacerbate popular feelings of powerlessness and alienation. Outlandish increases in military spending designed to implement the fantasy of renewed U.S. global domination will lead instead to ruinous nuclear and conventional arms races. Trump's style of provocation, deliberate unpredictability, bullying, and unrestrained folly will lead to intensified conflict, strange shifts in alliances, deliberately aggravated chaos, and wars. His energy policies will put climate catastrophe on steroids. This exacerbated polycrisis will produce a self-amplifying feedback loop that will increase the fear and anger that are prime sources and prime resources of Trumpism. Trump's behavior is consistently inconsistent. It is impulsive, disruptive, shameless, perfidious, and undeterred by predictably disastrous consequences. Trump's actions, far from achieving their purported objectives, will only compound the chaos of the polycrisis. Conversely, the polycrisis will only compound the irrationality, self-contradiction, and foolishness of Trump's actions. Trump may propose, but the polycrisis will dispose. The common assertion that the second Trump regime has been well planned and is guided and executed by competent experts was made a mockery of long before Inauguration Day. As Karl Rove, of all people, put it in the Wall Street Journal, inadequate vetting, impatience, disregard for qualifications, and a thirst for revenge have created chaos and controversy for Mr. Trump before he's even in office. The price for all this will be missed opportunities to shore up popular support for the incoming president. Fascist regimes historically have been marked by radically shifting social bases rather than stable interests. Their policies and actions gyrate opportunistically to court social sectors whose support they can recruit, at least momentarily. Trump's whole political career illustrates this tendency, most recently exhibited by the ascendancy of the tech bros in his administration. This unpredictability is aggravated by Trump's personal opportunism and erratically shifting passions and attention. In assembling his cabinet and other top officials, Trump has surrounded himself with yes men and yes women who guarantee folly. A good deal of post-election commentary is aimed to determine why the electorate voted for Trump. Here, too, uncertainty reigns. Specific factors often listed include inflation, Democrats abandoning the working class, racism, sexism, generalized fear of immigration, and other perceived threats, many of them rooted in the polycrisis, or simply gullibility to the Trumpian big lie. While all of these have some credibility, it may well be impossible to provide a valid explanation of the vote as a whole, let alone what it portends for elections in the future. But a crucial reality is highlighted by a post-election Reuters Ipsos poll in mid-December. Barely 40% of Americans said their opinion of President-elect Trump was favorable. 55% stated that their opinion of him was unfavorable. That indicates a great vulnerability of the Trump regime if its opponents are able to take advantage of his weaknesses. Trump's mental and physical health, such as they are likely to deteriorate further over the course of his term of office. There is a constitutional process for removing incapacitated presidents from office, but such a scenario is hardly likely to be voluntarily accepted by Trump or imposed against his will by his coterie, as long as he is conscious. Were he replaced by J.D. Vance, unpredictability would only increase. These known unknowns are likely to be aggravated by a plethora of unknown unknowns. Strategic assessment of the coming MAGA era must be made within this overall context of uncertainty.